So we are now going to discuss on the topic Garbha Sharira, how according to Ayurveda we can create and nurture life consciously. Ayurveda offers a very interesting perspective of how the body develops and matures into a fully grown individual. And this study of how the physical body is created, nurtured, and eventually dissolved back into the five elements, this whole story is discussed in the topic Shariram in Ayurveda. I would like to emphasize on the fact that in modern education of Ayurveda, we have taken a very reductionistic reinterpretation of the concept of Sharira. This is due to the influence of the modern classification of subjects in modern medicine, that we divide the body into the structure and function we call anatomy and physiology, and we have also divided Sharira into the Sharira Kriya Vijnana and the Sharira Rachana Vijnana. This is not the perspective about the body that our ancient classical Ayurvedic system offers. So we will re-examine the concept of Sharira as we discuss about Garbha Shariram, or the growth and development of new life. So Garbha Shariram is actually one of the aspects of the topic Shariram in Ayurveda. Today, technology has developed to such an extent that we are able to, surgically correct defects in the fetus even as it is growing in the womb. At a super specialty teaching hospital in Kochi, a pregnant woman's fetus was operated upon. So there was a giant tumor in the fetus, in the right lung, that was pressing on the heart of the baby. And the fetus had almost developed heart failure. And in the past, nothing could have been done to save the fetus. But today, because of advancement in technology, it is possible to surgically remove the tumor even when the baby is in the womb and it's just 21 weeks old. So the surgery is successful and the tumor is shrinking and the heart failure is resolved. So this is almost miraculous. We are also on the verge of creating the first artificial womb for humans. In Netherlands, scientists have developed an artificial womb where, it's an artificial uterus technologically created where you can grow new life. So this is the way technology is developing, and then we need to really think, what is it that systems of medicine like Ayurveda can offer in this field in the wake of astounding technological developments. Centuries ago, the Indian tradition, not only Ayurveda but other disciplines of knowledge, have discussed about very interesting insights related to the development of the fetus in the womb. So today modern science tells us that babies are able to recognize words even when they are in the womb. So we have to be careful what we say around a pregnant woman. It can hear sounds from the outside world and understand well enough these words so that when they are born, they are able to recognize the words based on what they heard during the intrauterine life. So in the last trimester of pregnancy, sound processing parts of the brain become active and the sound carries well through the mother's abdomen. We may think that the babies cannot hear because they are, cosily resting inside the womb of the mother, but the sounds actually reach the fetus. So you can actually speak to your baby much before it is born. It's very interesting that in our tradition, we had long ago understood that we can influence the fetus even before it is born. Now that is the topic I want to discuss here today. Technology has advanced so much that we are able to, at the physical level, do a lot of manipulations and intervene and save lives, anticipate congenital problems, anticipate birth challenges. But life is not just about the body. It is about an individual, about a person that goes much deeper. And when it comes to creating a new life, as a person, influencing the deeper individuality of the person, Ayurveda has definitely quite a lot to offer. So with modern medicine, we are able to work at the physical body like never before. We can do amazing, interventions, even in the intrauterine life. But Ayurveda tells us methods and approaches with which we can influence the development of the personality of the child even while it is in the womb. So in many centuries ago, the ancient scriptures have noted that it is possible to influence even the character of a child before it is born. We have the famous story of Prahlada. Prahlada was the son of an asura, a demonic personality. And the world was suffering, due to his cruelty. And at this time, there was a lot of discussion. Of course, this is a story, but there's a message that comes out of it. How can we put an end to the tyranny of this Asuric ruler? And a solution was that it would be possible to do this only through his own child. And now a child born to an Asura will also be an Asura. That is what we can expect. But this is where the thought engineering of a child, I think this is the first account of this possibility that we find in the Puranas, that sage Narada came to the home of this Asuric king Hiranyakashipu, and his wife was carrying his child, and Narada would narrate stories from the Puranas and give spiritual discourses which was heard by the mother of the child growing in the womb. And that is how Prahlada was born. When Prahlada was born, he had a profound orientations towards spirituality, and that even won him the anger of his own father. So this idea that human life can be influenced even before conception, this is, a very basic concept in Ayurveda. And today we will examine the topic Garbha Sharira from this perspective, what Ayurveda has to offer. But before that, I would like to highlight the Ayurvedic approach to Sharira. Vagbhada says in Ashtanga Hridaya that ityatra janma maranam yata samyak udahridam sharirasya tatasthanam shariramidam uchyate. So this topic called Sharirasthanam deals with the birth and death of the individual. It is the complete discussion about how a new life is created, and it traces its development and growth and the final dissolution up to death. So it is very inappropriate to classify or divide Shariram into just anatomy and physiology. It's not just about the physical structure and function of the human body. In modern medicine, the study of medicine starts with anatomy, looking at a dead body. This has been discussed also by many psychologists, that this has a very negative impact on the mind and the personality of the doctor who is being trained actually to be compassionate and helpful to the patients. When you get into medicine, you are confronted with a dead body and you become insensitive to death at the very beginning of the study. Whereas in Ayurveda, we say that Ayurveda's the first point of studying Shariram is not dissecting a dead body, but actually witnessing the birth of a new life. Because then a student of Ayurveda who starts or gets initiated into the learning process by witnessing the birth of a child, the manifestation of new life, will have an absolutely different orientation than somebody who starts studying the subject just by dissecting a dead body. So the krama or the sequence in which the subjects are arranged in the topic of Shariram or Sharirasthanam is extremely important, because the way the subjects are arranged is designed to develop a deep appreciation of the life process and create a mindset that will be well groomed to intervene very appropriately in different stages of life. There is a difference in the way this topic has been dealt with in the earlier classics like Charaka Samhita and Sushruta Samhita and Ashtanga Hridayam. But if we combine these two approaches, we get a very beautiful framework for studying Sharira, and this could be a very big contribution of Ayurveda in the future. We must really reconsider this approach and try to reintegrate Sharira Kriya and Sharira Rajana into the larger framework of Shariram in Ayurveda. So we know, if you look at the Sharirasthan of Charaka Samhita or Sushruta Samhita, it begins with Srishti Sharira. In Sushruta Samhita, the first chapter deals with Srishti. It deals with how the universe is created. In Charaka Samhita, Sharirasthanam, the first chapter is Kathita Purushiyam, which also in one way deals with the self, the original cause or the original source of consciousness from which all life manifests. So the first concept in Ayurveda when it comes to Shariram is the Srishti Sharira. So we study the human personality, the human being, not just as a physical body. This is the problem with modern medicine. In modern medicine, it's just the structure and function of the physical body. Our personality is not going beyond the physical plane. And that is why you start studying medicine by dissecting a dead body where there is no life. What really makes us a person, what really makes us alive, is missing in the dead body. So it's an extremely tragic, a tragedy that, medicine has to be studied by dissecting a dead body which has no life, in which there are no traces of the personality that has inhabited it. Whereas in Ayurveda, we say the human being is a conglomeration of three elements, Sattvamatma, Shariram, Chatrayameda, Tridandavat. So it is the self, the mind, and the body together that makes the individual. And it's very important to understand how these three elements integrate with each other. And this is what is discussed in Srishti. How does this creation of the Purusha come into being? How does a Purusha manifest? How does the mind, body and the self come together to create the spark of life? And that is what is first discussed in Shariram in Ayurveda. It's Srishti Shariram. How does the Srishti of the universe happen? The macrocosm happen. And within the macrocosm, how does the manifest? So from Srishti Sharira, we go to Garbha Sharira. In the Srishti Shariram deals with the manifestation of the macrocosm, the whole universe, and within that universe is the Garbha for the manifestation of the microcosm or the individual. So this is a very beautiful way of looking at Shariram. Our focus is not just on the physical body, but on the whole personality of the individual. The physical body is only the tip of the iceberg. Who is the person inhabiting the physical body? That is what Ayurveda is more concerned with. Not just, the physical frame of the person. And that is why we say it's very important to start the study of Shariram first by understanding Srishti. How did this universe, manifest? You can just imagine in a modern medical school, if students were asked to learn about the origin of the universe first and not anatomy, it would be a total change in perspective. They would be discussing about the Big Bang theory and, the cosmos. And then, it is also a very humbling experience to first have a vision of the whole universe and know that we are just a tiny dot, in the vast expanse of this cosmos. This is the kind of perspective that Ayurveda gives when we start the study of Shariram. We look at the vast expanse of the cosmos, contemplate and think about creation. How did this universe come to be? And how in this vast universe there are these sparks and specks of microcosmic existence, of a multitude of individuals who are expressing and aspiring for the manifestation of a higher consciousness. And this is Srishti Shariram. So, from Srishti Shariram comes Garbha Shariram, and Ayurveda says this is a very, very important point where we have to intervene. We can take part consciously in the creation of life. In fact, in Ayurveda, birth is not the creation of a new body. The birth is the occasion, it is a very sacred moment of the manifestation of consciousness through a physical body. This is an extremely important point to contemplate upon. Childbirth is not just the creation or expression of a physical body as if we are assembling some parts and creating a machine. That's what we see, and that's the way childbirth is being treated today. But what we need to understand is that as the body comes out, it is infused with the life of a higher awareness and consciousness. And this is what Ayurveda is focusing upon. We know that reproduction is a process through which the genes of the previous generation are transmitted to the new generation. That much we understand. And so the whole process, in order to make sure that the new generation is more robust, more healthy, we have to ensure that the genetic transmission occurs in a very harmonious and proper manner. So there's definitely nature itself is trying to preserve the purity of the genes, the quality of the genes. So that's one definite aspect of Garbha Sharira. But over and above that, according to Ayurveda, what is actually being transmitted from one generation to the other is not just the genes. We say it is actually the samskara. Only in human life it is possible to transmit samskara or culture from one generation to the other. So transmission of samskara is actually as important as the transmission of the genes. And this is why Garbha is the whole process of creation of Garbha is considered to be one of the samskaras in our culture. So from Srishti Shariram and Garbha Shariram, we go on. Next in Ayurveda, we study Dosha Shariram. So Dosha Shariram enables us to understand that the human body is a self-regulating system. The doshas are nothing but the principles of self-regulation. And the word dosha means that in spite of the fact that the body can self-regulate itself, it is also designed for self-destruction. So the lifeline of the body is itself the fault line. That is why the word dosha is used. Dosha means a fault. But dosha is also that which supports and sustains and regulates the body. So it is like the fault itself, the life itself has that inherent tendency or that inherent property to, dissolve itself. So that is, the body is a self-regulating. So if you were to translate the word dosha, we could say that the body is a self-regulating and self-annihilating apparatus. That's what the word dosha means. So we understand that through Srishti Shariram, the elements of the cosmos come together and constitute the Garbha. So we are connected to the macrocosm. This connection is very much emphasized when we study the subject of Sharira. The entire cosmos participate. We take elements from the cosmos and reconstitute them into the Garbha and create the platform for a higher consciousness to manifest. And the physical body is a tool for the manifestation of this consciousness. It self-regulates, but after a point of time, it also self-annihilates itself. So Dosha Shariram helps us to understand two things. One is how the body self-regulates and how the body self-annihilates. And then we have Marma Shariram. Marma Shariram deals with the vital energy of the body. In fact, the Dosha Shariram and Marma Shariram are unique aspects of Ayurveda. The Ayurvedic insight into the concept of Shariram. So Marma Shariram is discussing about all the subtle energy points, because Ayurveda gives you a model of the body which is not merely physical. And that is why the concept of Shariram is interesting. From dosha to marma to the physical body, Ayurveda tells us that there are non-physical dimensions to our personality, and that through the physical body we can access these trans-physical, reality of the body. And marma is one such concept. Of course, we can relate a lot of these marmas to physical structures, which is how generally in the classical Ayurvedic traditions marma has been discussed as anatomical points, either major arteries, blood vessels, arteries, or veins, or muscles, or bones. And we can to a great extent understand from an anatomical point of view what would happen if a marma was injured. It could be blood loss, it could be damage to a nerve, it could be damage to a muscle. So with the help of anatomy, we can indeed explain a lot of the marmas described in the classical Ayurvedic texts, because the classical Ayurvedic texts talk about 107 marmas which are to be basically avoided in surgery, and injury of which can have very unfavorable consequences. We know the 5 outcomes of marma damage. It could be sadhya pranahara, immediate death, kalandara pranahara, or death in due course, or it could be rujakara, pain, or vaikalyakara, disability, or vishalyakana, like if you try to repair the wound, then there will be a death. So this is only one aspect of marma. If you look at the oral traditions, the actual practices, like for example the Siddha system, they say that there are about 8,000 marmas. And this is interestingly not so discussed in the classical Ayurvedic texts, but many Ayurvedic practitioners have this knowledge of marma manipulation. I mean, this is a totally different concept of marma than we see in the classical text, because here in classical Ayurvedic text, the whole focus was on not injuring a marma. But here, the focus is on, stimulating and manipulating marma to modulate the flow of prana in your body. So there are concepts like marma santwana. Marma santwana means to pacify a marma. So 8,000 such marmas are described in many of the oral traditions, and even in Siddha textbooks where it is known as varma. There are descriptions of many thousands of marmas and also methods to manipulate these marmas. I have been personally witness to a marma manipulation demonstrated by a Siddha physician in Tamil Nadu, of which we can see a video. A goat, sorry for the slip of the tongue, a goat has been paralyzed just by manipulation of 2 marmas. So just in front of our eyes, you can see that the physician is just stimulating 2 marmas, and then the goat gets paralyzed. And then stimulating some other marmas, the goat becomes, active again. So this kind of intervention, the power of marmas. So when we ask this Vaidya whether we can do it in humans, say it's risky and dangerous, something goes wrong, we will be in trouble. So what I wanted to kind of highlight is that marma shariram is a very unexplored. It needs to be mainstreamed. This is a very important concept that needs to be brought into the academics of Ayurveda, and we must reinforce and enrich what is there in the classical text with whatever has been preserved in the actual oral traditions of Ayurveda. So after marma sharira, another very interesting concept in Ayurveda is pramana shariram. That is, Ayurveda has this anthropometric approach in determining the health status of an individual, what is normal and what is not. And Ayurveda uses a very individualized approach. I mean, we measure anthropometry with the length of the individual's own angula or finger. So it is a very personalized approach of determining what is normal and not normal. So my body is measured with units of length which is derived from my own physical body itself, my own angula. With that I measure my own body. So then we come to Sankhya Shariram, which actually means enumerating the body parts. It's much more physical. So modern anatomy would come under the concept of Sankhya Shariram. And then we have again a very interesting aspect of Shariram in Ayurveda, which is called Prakriti Shariram. So here we understand personality. Prakriti Shariram includes the discussion of not only the dosha prakriti, but the manasika prakriti also, as well as jati prakriti, kula prakriti, deshanupatini prakriti, kalanupatini prakriti, and vayonupatini prakriti. So the whole idea of prakriti is to help us understand how we are similar with others around us and how we are distinct from them. So every individual comes with a unique characteristic, just like our fingerprint is unique to us. The prakriti that we are born with is also unique to us. In fact, what Sharirasthanam tells us ultimately is that we are all made of the same ingredients, but then we are configured so differently. What makes us similar is that we are all made of the same ingredients. If you go, it's ultimately the Panch Mahabhutas from the Ayurvedic point of view, or even from the point of view of modern science. If you look at it at the elemental level, it's carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and then the trace elements, minor and major elements. If you look at it at the level of DNA, then it's the nucleic acids, adenine, guanine, thymine, cytosine. So if you look at what we are all made up of, we are all made up of the same stuff, but yet we are different. So the difference is just in the way we are configured. And so the study of Prakriti is enabling us actually to understand this gap between how we are configured differently, even though we are made up of the same elements. And Ayurveda became one of the first person-centered, predictive, preventive approach to medicine because of the strong and deep insight into the concept of Prakriti Sharira. And then we have Vikriti Shariram, which also, as I was discussing earlier, Dosha Shariram tells us the body is self-regulating as well as self-annihilating. And after a certain point of growth and development, and the body begins to disintegrate. And this understanding of how the body disintegrates is called as Vikriti Shariram. This is very important because it is due to Vikriti Shariram that we age. Aging is part of Vikriti Shariram. And Ayurveda had such a deep insight into Vikriti Shariram that we discovered that even though Vikriti is inevitable, even though we will age, if we take proper measures, we are able to preserve our functionality even up to old age. That is the importance of Vikriti Shariram. How can we age successfully? Even as our body is disintegrating, we can hold ourselves together and still be functional even at a very old age. And that is the insight that Vikriti Shariram gives us. So in this way, beginning from Srishti to Vikriti, Vikriti Shariram completes the circle. We are born, our physical bodies are constituted from the elements of the macrocosm. And in Vikriti Shariram, we re-enter or we dissolve back into this macrocosmic background. And that completes the whole cycle of birth and death. And in this process, this whole process is a platform for the transformation and evolution of consciousness. And this is why in Ayurveda, when we say a new child is born, like Vagbhada says, 𝘔𝑩𝑒 𝑠hukrartave sattva, 𝑠ْवकर्म क्लेश चोदित, 𝐵 सम्बध्यते युक्तिवशाद अग्निरिवारणौ. So for us, the birth of a new body is the whole important event there is the manifestation of sattva. So when the Shukra and Artava combine together, a platform is created at the physical plane for the manifestation of the consciousness. And so that is the key point in Srishti or the Garbha Shariram in Ayurveda.